Hey everyone, welcome to Biblio.com, used and rare book marketplace featuring over 100 million used, rare, and out-of-print books. In celebration of our Biblio.live virtual book fair, outdoor and adventure theme, we're here chatting with Julie, owner of Honest Dog Books. Julie Buckles and her husband, Charlie Ray, are wilderness travelers with a team of sled dogs, 2 teenagers, and deep love for community, literature, and conversation. Julie, thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This is such a thrill, especially on the theme. I mean, adventure is everything to me. So this is great.
Yeah, it lined up perfectly. So we're so excited you took the time to chat with us today. I know you have some exciting pieces to share with us. I would love to talk about the story of how you came to own Honest Dog Books. It's a really fascinating one. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to own the store?
Well, absolutely. So I have been and am a wilderness traveler. I've written my own book, which is called Paddling to Winter, about my husband and I's honeymoon journey from Bayfield, Wisconsin to northern Saskatchewan, about 1,700 miles, that we paddled one summer and then we stayed for winter. So I've been in bookstores all of my life. I've been a writer all of my life. I was a journalist. And about 3 years ago, I was painting my son's room and listening to podcasts. And the New Yorker podcast interviewed Tracy K. Smith, who is our former poet laureate. And she had done this beautiful project where she traveled around the country and read poetry in like nursing homes and in places where you don't expect poetry. And found out there's a book of this collection. So I came up to this bookstore, which was called What Goes Around at the time. It was a used bookstore, and it had been here for 25 years. It's where I always shopped. And I walked in and looked for this book of poetry, and they didn't have it. But as I was walking out the door, Howard, who was working behind the counter, said, "You know, Julie, you should buy this bookstore. We're getting ready to sell." And at first, my reaction was like, "No, I can't do that. I have 2 teenagers. I have a full-time job. We have sled dogs. And I can't add one more thing onto my plate." But my hands were shaking as I walked out the door. And I called my husband immediately and said, "We got to buy this bookstore." So we immediately changed it to Honest Dog Books to fit our aesthetic. That's a term for mushers. You call your best and most loyal and the dog that always wants to pull an honest dog. So that's the kind of service we try to provide.
Oh, that is a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing and how exciting. And sometimes you just know when you have to do something.
I know, and it's the timing's not right, but you make it work. And I was able to. For the last 3 years, I've been doing the bookstore, and my full time job. And of course, there's that pandemic thrown in the mix of it. And 3 months ago, I left my other job, and so this is now my full time gig, and it's super exciting to be here all the time.
Congratulations. I was just about to ask if you were still doing your job, and I kept thinking to myself, no way is she doing that. So
No, it nearly killed us, but I got through it. So
so relieved to hear you're out the other side and you've made this your full-time gig. It's an amazing story. Now, what types of books do you specialize in as owner of Honest Dog?
So the first thing I did was I incorporated new books in with used, and part of the reason for that was we just had books we wanted to recommend, and especially our foot traffic is a lot of tourists, and so they have we wanted all our regional books for sure, and so we brought in new books, and so we have a really strong regional section, and we really built out our indigenous section. We're in northern Wisconsin, and we're surrounded by 2 reservations, one tribe, the Ojibwa, and we really wanted to reflect that as well. And then, of course, dog sledding and dogs, and then just general fiction and philosophy and all the other things you would see at a bookstore. And then we have a couple of sections that are these rare books that we come across, usually in boxes that get dropped off by people who are just clearing out their mom and dad's basement or shelves, and those will probably be some of the ones I'll be showing you here in a little bit.
Do you feel like you come across your best finds by accident then?
Absolutely. We don't have it in the store. I would probably highlight it if we did, but in the box of just just random old books, we found a first American edition of Animal Farm, George Orwell's Animal Farm. And that was super exciting. You should see the staff when we find these things.
Yes, that's an incredible find. Wow. The kind of thing that gets you high on life, right?
Yeah, exactly. It makes it worth every box of books that get dropped off, and we're just like, no, that looks like an awful box of books, but then you never know what's going to be in there.
One little gem in there. That's all you
Yeah.
need. That's awesome. And I know you brought a few of those amazing finds to share with us today. Let's launch in. Can you tell us a little bit about the first one?
Yeah, let's talk about Dogs Rough and Smooth by Lucy Dawson. And she died in the 1950s. This was from 1936. She was a British painter who specialized in painting dogs with sketched out backgrounds. And her dogs have so much personality. And I love this book so much that there's been a reprint of it. Like you can get, it's actually Susan Orlean has written a preface for it. And I got it in the store, and it's nothing like this book, this original, because what's amazing about this book is it really has the energy that of her sketches, because the paper feels like sketch paper, and so the new edition that they just put out is a glossy bleh. I mean, there's a lot of books that get reprinted and you're like, great, I'm glad it's still around, but I just really didn't have any appeal. And I think it's mostly just because I've seen this one. But here's like a really nice example of these dogs. This one is named Taffy. And there's like, a more painted in version. And then over here is Taffy, a black and white sketch. And the book is a combination of that. And then she writes a little story about Taffy. And so I suspect these were portraits she did for people. And then she put together a collection and wrote a little bit about their personalities. So really, I think there's a list of the dogs in the front. And I'm just taking a quick look. She's sometimes signed by her nickname was Mac. So she would sign them with Mac. But here's like a total beautifully done one. It's a greyhound. Right there in the front. I like the way she uses the white. So this has 16 illustrations in color and more in black and white. So beautiful edition that some collector really should have.
And any dog lover would so appreciate the little anecdotes about their personality.
Well, since this is an adventure crowd, this is Alaska Nellie, and she was an early pioneer, a woman who was an early pioneer in Alaska. And so lived the dog mushing life and the rugged outdoor life. And then she wrote a book, and I don't know why, but there's something so endearing about her, because I think this maybe is the second one that's come through our store, but the way she just signs them and personalizes them. And I just have this picture of her as an older woman, just loving talking about this period of her life. I'll show you. So this is pretty common to see. I think she signed a lot of her books, but she does this really basic, it's sincerely Alaska Nellie. And I think you'll see that in quite a few books, but then there's some like this one where she's also inscribed it. And this is from May 17th, 1941 to Mr. and Mrs. Frederickson with best wishes for your success, your Alaska friend, Nellie H. Lawing. And so there it is with her last name. There you go. And then there are, I was going to find a little picture of her. Here's at the old Roadhouse that is also included in the book. I mean, this is absolutely like, and I'm pretty sure the first one that came through I gave to my dad. I lived in Alaska for 3 years when I was a child, and my parents are crazy for Alaska. And I went up in 2019 to help out with the Iditarod. So Alaska is near and dear to my heart. And I think anybody who's interested in Alaska wants this book. And it's an easy one for us to sell because so many people have some connection with Alaska. I had just had a guy in the store the other day whose great aunt went up, and I didn't tell him about this book because I wanted to talk about it today, so I held it back from him. But he bought another
with it yet, are you?
He he bought a different historic book about Alaska. But anyway, so this is a really fun. It's a piece of history, in the category of badass women. She is it, and just that lifestyle of the pioneer in Alaska.
What an amazing story about an adventure from back in the day. I love that. Okay, and then we've got one more book, true crime. I'm really interested in this one as well. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this one falls under the category of quirky books that come in, and sometimes, many times, these type of books send us down a rabbit hole of research, and we love reading about the stories behind the books. And this one is called, and this one's so darn sad, Charlie Ross, the Kidnapped Child. So there's nothing else there, but that's it. This apparently took place in the 1870s and may be the first for ransom kidnapping. And this sweet little Charlie Ross, and there's a photo of him, which is amazing too from that time period. So it was a wealthy family, and his brother, here they are, were out playing, and two guys in a truck just stopped and picked him up, and they took him. And the one boy, not Charlie, Walter was his name, escaped. They stopped at a general store, and the little Charlie was only 4 years old, so he didn't escape. But what's really tragic about this book is so the father put out a search, and for years and years and years was looking for him. And finally someone said, you should pull this all together in a book, because perhaps there's people out there who would know clues. It shows what a big deal this kidnapping was. I think there's something in here that where he writes, almost everyone in America knows this curly-headed boy. Like, this was a massive hunt. And so they put together this book, and it has like the original facsimiles, the letters, the ransom letter. And then, but the tragic thing, and the reason I'm sure it's never been made into a Hollywood film, is they never found him. So it's a sad true crime story. And it just as a parent, it just thinking about this poor man whose son was just grabbed from. And then, think about that boy, Walter. He must have just lived with that guilt, his survivor's guilt, his whole life.
Those poor kids. And as a new mom, I have an 8-month-old that oh my gosh, that just makes my heart break in half for that poor family.
Yeah.
And that's really, really interesting too, in the realm of true crime, just a full collection of all of the stuff they put out there. That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing those books with us today. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience today if they want to follow you or learn more about your shop? Where can they find you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always looking for new customers and to engage with. We have a very developed website, honestdogbooks.com. Of course, and you can find these rare books on Biblio. As you noted, I am very active on Twitter. It's @bookshonest. I don't know why it was supposed to be @honestdogbooks, but Twitter swapped it whatever, it works. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram and the usual places. So you can find us anywhere.
You can find us at Biblio.com on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And don't forget to head to Biblio.live and pre-register for our upcoming outdoor and exploration themed book fair, August 4th through 7th. Julie, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing those rare books with us.
Well, thank you. This was super fun.